Good evening. My name is Eugene Song. I am a member of the Council on Race and Equity on the Community Partnerships work group. So thank you for joining us tonight. As a note to viewers, the Council on Race and Equity is an apolitical entity and does not, as an organization, endorse any candidate. The Council invited both candidates for Newcastle Town Supervisor to participate in this Q&A session. Lisa Katz of United Newcastle declined, and Holly McCall of Democrats for Newcastle agreed to participate. So welcome, Holly. We appreciate greatly that you're taking the time to answer the questions from the CRE, especially since CRE has been mentioned in your platform. Our purpose today is to understand in greater detail how you intend to work with the CRE and your plans for approaching diversity, equity, and inclusivity work here in Newcastle. So if you're ready, we can begin.
I am ready. Thank you so much, Eugene. I really appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation and answer some of your questions.
Fantastic. So here we go. The first question is, the Newcastle CRE was founded on 4 critical mandates. The first being, quote, to commit to the achievement of true racial equity. What does true racial equity in Newcastle look like to you? And how do you plan to achieve this as supervisor?
Wow, so you're not starting out with the easy ones, huh? Just get right into it. I really am committed to achieving true racial equity here in Newcastle. And as a school board member, I've actually been deeply engaged in this work over the past year as well, and very much look forward to continuing this work with the town and the CRE. Of course, the town supervisor job is a 2-year term, which is not a lot of time for such a big job, but that's not going to stop me from trying, of course. There's a lot of work to do, and I appreciate that this is really just the beginning. I think some of the tangible things that I can say I would be able to approach in my first term would be institutionalizing the CRE and working to make it obsolete. I think, we'll know we've made sufficient progress when we say we don't need to have a CRE anymore. I want to make sure that we're funding the initiatives and programs of the CRE, using an equity and inclusion lens as we're developing town policies and programs and considering legislation, making sure we have training for staff in the community on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and partnering with the other organizations that are doing this work as well, such as the local school districts, the local PTAs. Frankly, I think the only way we're going to know if we're making this type of progress is to hear from the people who are directly impacted by this work. So I think ongoing communication with the CRE leaders is going to be absolutely crucial.
Thank you. The second mandate of the CRE is, quote, to deploy the necessary resources to support sustainable racial equity. As supervisor, what necessary resources would you deploy to support this work?
So as I've mentioned, I've been in this work in the context of the school district, and I know that it takes time, money, stamina, and really more than that, because this can be a very emotionally draining type of work. So it's really going to go beyond the basics of time, money, and stamina. One of the things I've supported on this school board was the hiring of a director for diversity, equity, and wellness to lead those programs in the school district. And when I'm supervisor, I will use my position to be centering the voices of those marginalized groups. And that means also providing the platforms to share their lived experiences and amplify their voices.
Thank you. The third mandate of the CRE is, quote, to utilize the power of government institutions and influence to uphold racial equity. Would you say that it is the responsibility of the supervisor, the board, and the government to uphold racial equity?
So the short answer is yes. The longer answer is yeah, I mean, absolutely. The supervisor can and should be using her position to uphold and promote racial equity. The supervisor sets the vision and the agenda for the town. So, as supervisor, I would want to make sure that we're doing policy reviews and funding the initiatives like I've mentioned before, and keeping that equity and inclusion lens, and being good partners, not just with our local organizations, but also with the county and the state, and really to be leaders in this work.
Thank you. The fourth mandate of the CRE is, quote, to work in partnership with others to achieve racial equity beyond our borders. What does this look like to you?
So another big question. And, and I appreciate it, because this really is work that we need to challenge ourselves to think about and not be reactive or living in a moment. This is something that we have to be intentional about. So as we're doing the work in Newcastle, I think it's going to be important that we're taking our learnings and sharing our successes that we have within the community and leading the change and developing the programming that we think is important here. I think that it's on the supervisor and the CRE leaders to make sure that we're networking, sharing these learnings, what works for us, what doesn't, how are we as a community coming along this change curve, because it is a change process, and it's not always going to be smooth. And so I would definitely be committed to being an ambassador for the town and the CRE across the county, across the state, as far as is relevant for us. And we should certainly be pushing ourselves as well.
Thank you. You've mentioned in your platform that you would implement many of the recommendations made by the CRE. Which recommendations would you implement, and what is your timeline for implementation?
So, as you know, I've been working on the Chappaqua Central School District Board of Education, and on the Anti-Racism and Equity Committee. And so I've had the pleasure of processing the community education recommendations that were presented. And really, I've been so impressed by the thoroughness of the research and the quality of the recommendations. So I really do look forward to continuing to work with the CRE to implement these programs on the town level as well. And ultimately, I think that the selection of the specific recommendations that are going to be implemented is not something that I would be picking and choosing on my own, or even just with the town board. I think it's something that really does need to be done in partnership with the leaders of the CRE, and a cross-functional prioritization, keeping in mind, the available budget, because I'm certainly committed to making sure that there's funding, but unfortunately, it's not going to be an unlimited pool of money. So some of the recommendations that have really stood out to me, though, are things such as a community pool. I know this has been discussed in the past, but I do think that this is a good time to revisit it. I know that it's something that can certainly kind of even the playing field and allow the entire community to come together in one recreational space. The implementation of the form-based code, this rezoning process that's currently underway, is something else that the CRE had called out as a tool that can be used to help promote diversity and inclusion. So certainly, I am in support of that for other reasons, including diversity, but I think that, that's another one that really speaks to me. And then the other element is the partnership with the school district. I think that that's something that I'm uniquely qualified to really lead for Newcastle with the school district, coming from the place of doing that work on the school board and on the committees. So one strategy we can use when we're taking a look at these recommendations is to take some of the easier ones, the less expensive or even free ones, such as some of the civic engagement recommendations, I think really fit well in there, that they're low-hanging fruit, so to speak. And I think we can probably take those and run pretty easily. Some of the others might be a little bit more financial investment. And I think that's really where the prioritization is going to come in, where we're looking across all of the work groups and doing really as a partnership between the CRE and the town to make sure that we're identifying some key priority initiatives and developing an implementation plan to make sure that we're approaching it in an intentional manner and able to measure our progress there.
Thank you. The issues of race and equity are often put on the back burner until election years when candidates are vying for votes. Some would say BIPOC community members are only courted for their votes and are forgotten after elections are won. What are your thoughts on that statement?
So first, I want to say, long before I decided that I was going to run for supervisor, I was engaged in this work. So the comfort, the centering of the BIPOC community voices is something that's been important to me outside of running for an office. But I think that you're right. I think that there certainly are people that only come out and want to engage with our BIPOC community when they want to vote. And I think that that is really a horrible way to treat someone. I think that it is even worse to feel that way, that you're only valued for your vote. As a candidate and as a leader, I do see every person as an individual, not a vote. And I look forward to continuing to have conversations and engagement with all members of the community in Newcastle.
Thank you. The breadth and depth of the CRE's work and capability were built and modeled by founding supervisor Ivy Poole, who was not only a champion of the CRE's work, but also actively recruited, supported, and advised CRE leaders in navigating local challenges. As supervisor, what is your plan for supporting future CRE leaders?
So I am so grateful to now Supervisor Ivy Poole, for all of her service to the community, and in particular, her work in establishing the CRE and building such a fantastic council and committee that really dove into this work with their hearts and their heads. So I would want to, as much as is possible, to continue to be working in her model. So continuing to be recruiting members and leadership is important, or we're not going to be able to develop that long-term sustaining membership. And really, as a leader in my past and now, I find that being available and helping those future leaders to develop their individual problem-solving skills really helps them. It really helps us cultivate the types of leaders that can ensure that long-term viability and success in an organization. Of course, it's not just it's not just that easy. This work really can be draining emotionally, and I think that it's going to be very important that I also, as a leader, am supporting the emotional well-being of the leaders in the CRE and the members who are doing the hard work. As a mom, this is something I'm practicing daily. So, it's something I have been doing and I am ready to continue doing with a different set of folks.
Thank you. So our last question for tonight. The CRE has created a safe space for many BIPOC families, residents, business owners, and allies to not only support one another, but to also share challenges being faced in their own lives. Where previously BIPOC voices were silenced or ignored, the CRE gave these voices a safe place to live and gave allies a place to show genuine support. As town supervisor, how will you ensure that BIPOC voices remain centered in the community and that we, as a community, continue on the sometimes uncomfortable journey towards appreciating the BIPOC experience and towards racial equity in Newcastle?
So the first thing I really need to do here is acknowledge my own existence, which is I experience this world as a white person. And I know that that is not the same experience that the BIPOC community experiences and lives. And I hope that I am considered an ally. It's what I strive to be. It's also, though, personal to me. My niece identifies as Black, and she definitely experiences the world differently than I did at her age. She's a freshman in college, just finished her first year. And I know that she's going through that with a very different lens and very different reactions from folks. So I want you to know that this is something that I really am committed to, not just for Newcastle, which I love, but my niece, who I love, and the, the world. We need to make the world a better place, frankly. So, this is work that we really should have been doing for the last 400 years. This is not a moment that's going to be over when it's not in the news. We need to continue doing this work no matter what is making the headlines today, this week, this month. And I'm definitely, absolutely 100% committed to making sure that Newcastle continues to progress on this journey of being as welcoming and inclusive as we can be. This is something that is high up in our priority list with my running mates, Lori Morton, Michael Weinberg, and Jennifer Bounds, because it's important to all of us and it will get the attention of all of us when we're serving on the town board.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our Q&A session for tonight. Holly, thank you for participating. And thanks to everyone who's watching this. Have a good evening.
Eugene,
yes.
Could I just one final thought, if you don't mind?
Sure,
I would like to thank you for your time sitting with me this evening. And I would like to thank the CRE, the current members, the past members, the future members for doing this work and believing in Newcastle like I do.
Thank you so much, Holly. It's much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Good night.